The Rappahannock Oyster Company in Topping, Virginia is a family business, passed from grandfather to grandson.
Pretty sweet desk, right?
Cousins Ryan and Travis Croxton have been running the place for the last 20 years, helping protect one of the region's most cherished resources.
We're not taking from nature, we're actually adding to it.
How does that work? Well, these aren't wild oysters. They're grown in a protected environment.
The idea is while we're farming these, the wild population gets a chance to rebound.
Patrick Oliver is one of the company's oyster farmers. He's helping the native oysters rebound from decades of disease and over-harvesting that depleted the Chesapeake's oyster harvest to less than 1% of what they once were. It's work that thousands of lives depend on.
Without the oyster, you don't get these effects that allow for a healthy ecosystem.
According to the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, adult oysters filter up to 50 gallons of water a day each. With fewer of these natural cleaners, all aquatic life was at risk. But thanks to oyster farming, that's starting to change. Rappahannock's operations happen across 150 acres of the Chesapeake. Most of the action happens beneath the surface. That's where more than 10 million oysters of all different sizes live in nearly 5,000 cages along the bottom. They arrive from hatcheries, tiny and full of potential. By the time they leave, they're a lot bigger and a whole lot tastier. What happens in between is a complex process that's closely monitored.
That's got it.
Over the course of roughly a year and a half, oysters are grown, removed, sorted by size, and left to grow a little more. Rinse and repeat until they're ready for market, and it's a high bar to get picked.
Most of these oysters actually go back out in the water. We're really only kind of cherry picking the best oysters for market.
Oliver makes sure that each oyster gets enough care, not just to survive, but to be healthy and, of course, tasty. To the well-trained tongue, he says it's obvious they're from the Chesapeake. Part of Rappahannock's own operation is a tasting room right across the street. But accessibility is important too, and one of Croxton's top priorities.
We also want to be able to make oysters affordable and available to just about anybody.
Altogether, Croxton says the company puts out between 6 and 8 million oysters a year. Some years, farm production in the Chesapeake even exceeds the wild oyster harvest. Croxton says that's the whole point.
We've definitely seen an explosion of interest, both in consuming oysters and in growing them. So I think it's here to stay. I wouldn't call it a fad 20 years later.
Now, Lorenzo and Adam, looking across the expanse of the Chesapeake, you see nothing but water. And Croxton says that's no accident, that part of being a good steward is keeping those clunky cages out of sight so that people who live along the river and get out on the water can enjoy it as they always have.